Cool. So recording, we're live. This is going to be a fun episode. And guys, we're doing these once a week, right? So you're still going to get your regularly scheduled programming, sports card memorabilia, hobby talk. But once a week, we feel obligated to bring you guys topics on NFT and really decentralized finance is really what the conversation here is about. It's about this new financial system that we're entering into that we saw in 2020 as kind of just the beginning. And now it's really, really gaining steam. I'll give you guys, before introducing my guest, the guest here is a dear friend. It's someone we've had on. He's got an awesome personality, got a ton of charisma, but really he knows a ton of stuff in the hobby. But before I introduce him, let me give you guys some context. All of you out there know the site Etsy. Marketplace, all of this memorabilia, collectibles on there, art, all of this stuff is on there. Well, let me give you guys some context. In August of this year, in the first 16 days, OpenSea, which trades digital collectibles, surpassed it in volume. $2.3 billion in the first 16 days. Did more than Etsy did that entire month. So just to give you context, and that's from 200,000 wallets. 200,000 people are only transacting on OpenSea. So just take a second to let that sink in. We're in the beginning. And if you're just getting into the NFT space, whether you've deployed $1, $1,000, or not a single cent, you're not late and you're super early. And
what inning would you say we're in? What inning would you say we're in?
We are one ground ball out into the first.
Is it batting practice maybe? I mean, has the game even started yet?
I
mean, what inning? All right, now introduce Paul Plunge. But
I will.
The point being, this is huge, and this is why we're focusing so much time and attention on this stuff, right? And we could not be luckier than to have Plunge on because, listen, this is an everyman if there ever was one, right? This guy, he laughs, he rolls with the punches, but on top of that, he knows a little bit about everything. And it's shocking to find those folks, right? Someone who's gone through this journey over the last year, and probably, if you were to do snapshot in time a year and a half ago and pull Plunge out of whatever job he was doing at the time, get him out of the basement, right? The plunge in, as we call it, right? It's and say, hey, by the way, do you know what you'd be doing? You'd own a Hearst currency and it'd be worth $40,000. And really all it is a bunch of dots. And you'd be trading this and you'd be all involved in NFTs, blah, blah. The plunge in would probably be bursting uproarious laughter and be like, what the hell is that? What are you even talking about? And yet here we are. So it's kind of cool because you've gone on that journey that we think a lot of people are going to go on going forward. You probably had a couple of people help you along the way. And we, with your help and with the help of the other guests we're bringing on, we want to be those folks who help the next 200,000 people who are going to be trading on OpenSeas and wherever else they may be trading going forward. Right? Yeah. So there's my intro for this guy.
That's a good intro.
To many. PlungeFather.
The Sherpa. And I think it's sort of funny. Like I use that metaphor a lot with Sherpa, just like, hey, experienced guide, right? Someone that you pay or at least like you latch onto that can help you up the mountain, right? Everybody's climbing a different mountain. Like it's not Everest. Everybody is working on different things. Everybody cares about different things. And I think the on-ramp into sort of, Andrew, you talked about like decentralized finance in general or cryptocurrency or NFTs and digital collectibles. Like we all sort of like think about them and talk about them as like this singular unit, but in reality, like there's so many different avenues into like understanding cryptocurrency and blockchain assets, right? Things that happen and are transacted on the blockchain. And we will become far more familiar with all of these different applications of this blockchain technology over time. But yeah, you're dead on, Gage. I think like if you said a year ago, you would be like at least 5% more knowledgeable about the random person on the street, like on blockchain than you would be now. I'd be like, no way. I was the guy that was telling my friends that were buying Bitcoin when it was $200, like, this is a Ponzi scheme. Like I was telling my friends who were buying it at $6,000, like, I don't know if Bitcoin's going to exist in a month. And I'm sort of not all in. I couldn't say all in because if I was all in, I'd quit. I've already quit my job, but like I'm very, very like at least bullish on the future of this in general, even if there are particular elements of it that I'm bearish on. So I appreciate the intro. It's always good talking to you guys, and I'm happy to be here.
Plunge, I'm curious. Can you take us back where your kind of interest began with this? Mm-hmm. So for me, I was on Wall Street in 2012, kind of right on the ashes of that financial crisis, and I got to see firsthand, how the banking system works and how the banking system really lets down the common retail guy, and gal, and that's why I fell in love with cryptocurrency, and I've understood it that way. And since then, I've been nonstop learning about it. What's your origin story? Like, how'd you find yourself in the space?
I think like a lot of people, I was Top Shot first, pulled in through the wave in January. And I sort of approached it not just as like, hey, there's money to be made, but I sort of really got into the community side of things and analytics side of things, really sort of diving deep into how the market was gelling and how it was becoming a thing. So, as the analytics sites that we now know from an NFT marketplace perspective and just, Top Shot specifically, weren't quite there yet. Like I was doing a lot of legwork on my own to figure out, hey, what the hell is going on here? And over the last few months, like branched out from Top Shot, just like many other people out there. So that was sort of like my, I hate to say the term gateway drug, but like that was my introduction into this space in general. And mostly focused on that since. Like I'm still not like well invested, I should say, into like DeFi protocols. I'm not like well invested into like crypto holdings. I'm not like well invested into other areas. Most of my focus has been on sort of like NFTs and collectible markets in general over the last 6 or 7 months. And now my holdings, like Gage mentioned, like I have a handful of like pretty good pieces. I've got some cool cats. I've got Penelopes. I've got a bunch of different other stuff. But I'm sort of a personality and sort of just a content creator, I guess is the right term, on Twitter and on Twitch. So that's sort of like the entry point there for me. And where I'm at now is sort of like, I just enjoying the ride and like talking about it and explaining it to people and trying to make it simpler for those that are here and those that aren't. Just sort of trying to share what I've learned because there's a lot to learn.
So this is great. Let me ask Andrew, you're great with these questions, but I have to do this right now, 6-7 minutes.
You're pretty great too
with Plunge. Because of what he just said, right? Because there's a lot of me in there too. People, Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme and there's no way this is going to last. And, I can't actually go to the store with my Bitcoin and buy anything. Although that's changing. This was me a while ago, right? This was me, the same exact thing. And, poor Rohan, he basically gets called a drug dealer all the time with as many people who say it's a gateway drug with Top Shot, right? I mean, basically he's the biggest pusher on earth, Rohan, right? But the why I asked you this is in yesterday's episode, we announced we're doing an NFT that we're trying to do as an educational NFT. We're trying to do it as, something that's like, it's funny. I used it because I have kids, like my first remote control toy, my first, you learn how to use my first phone, my easy bake oven, right? We're going to try to do my first NFT, right? So you're the perfect person to ask this, right? So for someone who a year ago was basically making fun of your friends saying, why would you spend $6,000 on Bitcoin? NFTs are ridiculous, or didn't even know about NFTs. Why would you tell people it's a space that you're in and that they should also be exploring or getting educated in? Because coming from you, someone who not that long ago was, I don't want to call you a hater, but a hater.
Yeah, no, I was definitely. I would definitely say that. And I think a big part of the hate that I had and sort of the doubt, I think is probably the right word, right? Like the doubt of the efficacy of this thing moving forward was, number one, lack of like exposure. And number two, sort of a parroting of sort of sound bites from other people, right? That were, that confirmed my viewpoint in some way, shape, or form. And it's like the inverse now. And you'll see that across the NFT space in general. Like, the loudest people that you hear about are, and if you're in Twitter and Discord and everything, are the people that are like bullish on it, right? So it's sort of an echo chamber to some degree. And I think what's changed in my like experience is that when you start to mess around with it, like if you can get past that barrier of like entry point and you start playing around with it, and I'm assuming cardboard is very similar, like, hey, I can't see myself walking into a card shop and buying a pack of cards, but then like your friend invites you to the Twitch stream where you crack a cool pack and someone gets an autograph and you're like, oh shit, I can see an application of this in a different way than I imagined. And I think that that's where sort of my change in attitude and change in dynamic in how I think about things has shifted a lot. Is it's not just like, oh, hey, this is the coolest tech, I'm an expert on it, but I can see how the application of this technology is like actually coming to fruition in some ways. And as you learn more and more, and as you play more and more, which does take money, it does take time, it does take effort, it does take energy, it does take emotions. Like there's all those things which many people aren't willing to put towards this thing that's speculative at best. In many cases, like if you do some of that, like you can sort of see how the application of this stuff can extend beyond collectibles and into like media and ownership, right? For like talking about music, right? How do we think about ownership of music differently than the current model? And I imagine that most people don't really think about ownership of music other than, hey, I can get it on Spotify, right? We don't even have to think about it anymore. But how do we reward artists in that way? And if you can sort of think about it from that perspective, and you start branching into the collectible side of things, if you're thinking about art, that's a specific niche, right? If you're interested in that, and that's something that you collect in real life, or that you like to display on your physical home in real life, is that something that when a huge portion of your identity becomes online or is expressed online in some way, shape, or form, that the community that you're around would like to see something like that, just like the people that you invite into your house would like to see that, or that you'd like to display to them to show your culture, to show where you've been, or as a token of some experience that you've had in some way, shape, or form, right? It's almost always like a story, right? Hey, this came from my grandpa that got it in Korea in 1953, or that's actually a real story, but
Provenance.
There's
provenance.
Right. There's provenance.
Yeah,
and I think that it's a lot easier. Yes, exactly.
This watch down.
And it's in NFT world that applies too, guys. So like this was owned by Mark Cuban, or this was in Mark Cuban's wallet. That holds this provenance. Something you mentioned. I don't mean to cut you off, Plunge, but literally this came to mind. So a lot of people out there with this NFT surge, it puts people into two buckets. Like I'm all on board, or this is the dumbest thing ever. But I urge people to think a lot in first principles and to learn the why this happens. So Cage is cracking up.
because
just stay with me, Cage.
This is an or and an and, right? So it can be awesome and dumb. Some of them are pretty dumb and they own it. But go ahead, do your thing.
But before we even talk about the specific art, let's talk about a use case. So there's a great Dave Chappelle stand-up, but also he talks about this. How when he was young, he created Chappelle Show. And Comedy Central actually handcuffed him on that initial contract at 18 years old, where he got some money up front to create it. But all of the back-end royalties now go to Comedy Central. So think about that. Dave Chappelle, one of the greatest comedians, artists of all time, created this amazing show that we quote, "I'm Rick James, bitch." We all quote that. But he profited off of that just a touch. But this media company in Comedy Central, they profit off of it in perpetuity. So when this guy had no access to capital at 18 years old, he had to go to Comedy Central. With NFTs, he can create something, a smart contract attached to his show, a segment, a series, whatever it is, where the fans get to invest, get to support Dave Chappelle, and they get to share in his success. And to me, if people can't wrap their head around the importance of that, they're living under a rock, in my opinion, because that's just Dave Chappelle, but that happens all the time in music, art, and culture.
Yeah. And I follow the logic there, and I follow the use case too. I think where I've seen sort of over time where technology and new paradigm shifting happens is certainly like the proof of concept stuff, where individuals and small groups start to do this thing, and it proves itself out to the point that large capital, large media, large business enterprise, right, can take advantage of that and then like leverage it and do it really well at scale. Like the at scale part matters a lot for people. And right now we're not at scale, right? So if we think about kind of that shift, right, that shift that you're mentioning of an individual artist sort of at least having control over their intellectual property in a different way, what that relies upon in a very significant way is the distribution mechanisms, which are still centrally owned and operated, right? And as the distribution mechanisms become less centralized and the consumption mechanisms for me to consume that content become less centralized, then like these concepts can prove themselves out in very different ways. And I think we're seeing that with streaming services more broadly, but you're a fool if you don't think that, and I don't think either of you guys are fools, but like you're a fool if you don't think that Disney and Warner Brothers, yeah, and and all these other companies aren't thinking about this in a very significant and serious way, not just in terms of like digital collectibles for all of the intellectual property that they own generally, but how do we like think about and respond to our artists and the IP that we are creating or funding in some way, shape, or form as the distribution channels change. And that's why we have all the streaming wars. That's why we have individual apps for all of these things. That's why there are fights over the syndication rights for The Office and all of these other things, is because it's a huge piece.
That's why Amazon bought an MGM, right?
Yeah, huge. And it's all like ownership of content, right? So if the ownership of that content starts out decentralized, it becomes very different. And you see a couple of examples of that with like Stoner Cats is like the big one with the Ashton Kutcher, Mila Kunis backed NFT project that was going to fund this animated series over time. And it sort of had some legs. Like there's been a lot of criticism of that. There's another one called Glue Factory Show that has some horses that you can buy. And there's also some other things like Bored Apes comic or Punk's comics and some of these other things where it's like, hey, there's content going to be created with these characters that we own or that we have ownership of. I'm curious to see over time though, like right now, if someone has something or is already popular, right, and already has something that everybody wants, that is going to be a much bigger impact than something that starts small, that there's a small community of people that want to make it bigger. It's a lot harder to draw external forces and external money into that than it is to start with something that everybody already recognizes and knows and bring money into that. I don't know if I articulated it.
We have Andrew, and everybody wants a piece of Andrew.
Well, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to think about that, but like, okay.
No, but I know what you mean. Like Gary,
Top Shot's the example
right?
of this. Well, it's Top Shot, right? Like, it's like people care about the NBA and the intellectual property of the NBA. Like, if you just had some, not even sports related, like if it's just this character that I drew or someone else drew, like it's a very different addressable market of people that might care about that, and the sort of financial incentives for people to care about that. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this big IP stuff, not just with sports cars and collectibles and stuff there, but media across the board for shows, TV series, movies, cartoons, you name it. It's video games. That's going to be the big one, right? Like huge application in video games.
I mean, one thing that came to mind, this is going to be amazing, guys. Crypto Casuals is kind of the name of this segment that we're doing. And we just want to talk all things NFTs, crypto, blockchain. So these conversations, the format's going to change over time. So you guys that are listening early on, we appreciate it. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to ask. But like Gary came out with two shows, Trash Talk and Little V. I don't know if a lot of people remember Little V. I personally, and I sent him a text with this idea, maybe he'll use it one day. I could see a Little V crossover where characters from V-Friends are now on his popular YouTube show, Little V, right? And there's a cool crossover opportunity there. It's really uncharted territory, right? It's kind of like what's cool about a space like this is the creatives get to pave the way. And then I guess they say marketers come in and ruin everything. So that's where I'm at. I want to ask, I do want to talk a little bit about minting and how that's similar to opening packs of cards. Before we jump off, Cage, were there any topics that Plunge mentioned, anything you want to go to before we move on?
No, I mean, listen, I got to give Plunge a chance to talk about what he's into, you know what I mean? The stuff that he likes. And the reason for that is because it dovetails what you're talking about, right? Every NFT is different. We're all trying to do different things now, but you're right. We talk about Gary a lot, especially in this space, but he consistently says that it's about the jockey, not the horse, right? And all of these projects have jockeys, and those jockeys, they're able to basically build their projects out and find ways of continuing to deliver value to the people who own their tokens. And Plunge, last time I talked to him, I don't want to call him a shiller or anything like that, but last time he talked about this, Penelopes it's another cat, you know. I mean, and the Pseudo Sisters who we had on, they actually talked about that one because we were talking about, hey, do you want to be the first lion? Do you want to be the first one of these? You don't have to be. You could be the 8th cat as long as you're doing something different when you're the 8th cat, something that sets you apart from all the cats before you, right? Like this 47 apes, right? You know, you don't have to be the first banana. You got to be the best banana, right? So, but one of the things you were telling me about it, and you can get into it, right? Because I know this is one of many projects you own, and just so that we're on the same page, after Plunge told me about this one, I went and bought one as well. So you guys should know. One, I have
financial advice.
I have one of these, not financial advice, but I own one of these. But why I bring it up is because it's a little. It's a way for you to explain how these projects are different, right? And that this particular one does certain things that are different than others, and that's a cool thing about the NFT space, right? They're not all one and the same. It's not just, hey, let me put a picture of a cat or a dog or an elephant or whatever it is up on Twitter. Here's what's behind that animal, right?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think, and I guess the financial disclosure for me here is I own 10 of these. I owned 14 of that. So, and I bought all they pandered to me, I will say, because they made a trait of these cats that they have plungers on them. Can I
see this, Andrew? They have a plunger.
They have a plunger on them. I don't know if I can share my screen. I don't know if that's
you can share your screen.
Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah, we share our screen all the time.
Okay. Let me do that.
Yesterday, I pulled up Novak Djokovic game-worn shoes, so it's very handy.
All right, can you see my screen? All right.
Yes, sir.
So this is my OpenSea page, but if I look at Pernelopes, so I had Carlini, who is one of the founders of the Pernelopes. These are all the cats that I own. One of the founders of the Pernelopes, who is kind of an OG in the NFT streets. He's been in NFTs for 4 or 5 years, came in with CryptoKitties, which was the first project that Dapper Labs, the same company that runs Top Shot, did. So like December 2017, I think is his entry point. Worked with Pranksy on NFT boxes until recently, and then started this project. And the idea here is like, same concept of 10,000 PFPs, right? Like individual cats that all have different traits and whatnot. But what I think is different in a lot of ways about this project is that, like, frankly, in my opinion, this cat, like this picture doesn't really matter. Like it's the fact that I own a token, right? And this token is one of 10,000 tokens. I have 10 of them. So I have 1/1000th of the tokens, right? Of this project. And the project itself is structured in a way that they funded what they call the kitty bank, which is essentially a centralized wallet of assets that they have sort of gathered, right? And that kitty bank that right now has like really high end NFTs in it. It's got like 40 fuck render crystals, which is a artist that did this very significant drop, and each of those are worth 2 or 3 ETH. It's got 5 or 6 VFriends in it, which I don't even know what the floor on VFriends is, 15 or 20 at this point, I assume. And then it's got a punk in it, like a crypto punk. It's got a handful of other like really sought after and really expensive stuff. I think there's a Chromie squiggle in there if you're into art blocks. But the idea that you own with this individual token over time, right? They're going to do an airdrop every single month to give you another token. And at the end of all of this, 8 months or 9 months or whatever of these token drops, is you're essentially going to get, regardless of what the picture is on those tokens, I will have 9 pieces of the bigger pie. Right.
So can I just pause there real quick to give people like that come from traditional finance?
Yeah.
It's not a one-to-one apples to apples comparison, but to me, I equate that to a dividend, right? Yeah. Kind of a dividend paying stock. So again, the team matters. A dividend from Coca-Cola, who's definitely going to be around in a year, is different than from what's a knockoff brand, Pepsi, for example.
RC Cola.
CC, Shasta.
So, but it's the equivalent of a dividend. It's the equivalent of a dividend.
Right. And another thing, so I think with this, like the dividend here is like you own a piece of, or like you own the rights to 8 more pieces of essentially this larger pot. And I think where, independent of what each of these individual cats does and what the secondary market on this is right now, the floor purchase price on this is 0.7. You can see most of these at like 0.15, 0.2 ish, because I was after the plunger cats. But ultimately there is sort of multiple things happening at once, right? Like I could be making a speculative investment on the value of this individual token, but the value of that individual token is predicated to some degree on what it grants you longer term. And I think what's really different about this that many people are sort of like keying themselves into recently is like there are 10,000 of these, right? And right now, if you just looked on OpenSea, there's, I don't even know, like 330 of them available. So like when you talk, right now, how many times can you fit that in? So the, and also
do I drink milk from a saucer? Sorry,
now look here.
Meow.
Now listen
Sorry,
up.
Meow.
It's a great movie. That's a great movie. So there over time, and there's also a liquidity pool, which I won't get into here because that's 201 level stuff. But the idea that
if you start around all hibbity bibbity.
If you start to think about like why would a project that has 10,000 things only have 33 or 330 available of them, like at any given time, compared to like Bored Apes, for example, which if you went to Bored Apes, like how many are available for sale right now out of 10,000? You're probably looking at like 1,500, I bet.
So that's the entire stock pool that's offered versus the float, right? Just for, again, I always like to,
1,800.
For me, to help people who come from traditional finance, who invest in 401k or day trade. I think for me, I think it always helps to have some similarities and comparisons to know how these apply to me. So that's how I think about it. A stock with a low float, you ask why does it have a low float? So keep going. I apologize.
Yeah, and I think that with looking at Penelope's in general, like it's less about the art, it's less about the token itself, the actual picture, and it's more about what it is, right? Like what it represents and what this project is like aiming to do, right? Because they still have to execute. I think that's a really important point with all this stuff is like you can buy, and VFriends is the same thing, right? Like you're buying VFriends on the idea that Gary is going to execute, right? You're betting on the jockey that like this picture that is, a really shitty drawing, if we're being frank, like a shitty drawing that grants me access to this VCon thing that like I hope will be valuable. I hope that someone cares about this. I hope that it will be worth my time, effort, and energy. Like, but like you're looking at it from a very different perspective that you're sort of like using, it's less about this cool art piece and more about like what it grants me. And I think VFriends is a really interesting example and something that like initially when it came out, I was like, I didn't get it. I was like, okay, I can understand if you are like an acolyte, right? You're a V friend or a Gary V acolyte, and you like are a Tony Robbins truther and love being pumped up, and like you appreciate getting spoken down to with kindness, like whatever those things are, right? Like if
shallow Hal,
right,
gal.
Exactly. Right. And I didn't get it, but I recognize that like from a demand perspective, like what he was doing, and it's genius, is he was defining mechanisms for people to interact with him in a very formulaic way. As compared to right now and previously, like there were less defined avenues for people to get a hold of him and talk to him and gather his time, right? So he was in a way beyond the VCon admission ticket, like all of these different experiences that he was tying to this VFriend token were ways to formalize the interaction that he has with people that want his attention and time. And that's wonderful if you can do that. I don't care to ever have Gary V's time, right? I will never pay for Gary V's time. If he wants to come in the Plunge in and talk to me, great. I would love to pick his brain about those things, but I will never ever pay for the time, for the privilege of interacting with Gary V. There are some people that care about that though. In the same way that people want to spend $1 million on a McLaren or a Ferrari or whatever those things are, there's an addressable market for it. And even if that market doesn't include me, you can still recognize that like the mechanics that he's developing are really important and frankly, like pretty genius.
So basically the headline here, twofold. I don't want to get into the punks and the mechanics of it, but if we just title the episode, it's you don't want Gary V to come in your plunging, but if he comes in your plunging, you're okay with it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So we move along. It's great. I mean, you said
I wouldn't say that it was. I would never pay for Gary V to come on the plunging.
Okay. Well,
I would like him. It would be great to talk to him. I would never pay for that. I would never.
Probably illegal. But we digress. So talk to me about this, right? You own 1/1000th of the Penelope shares. How does that equate to a punk? Is there a set date that they're going to sell the punk and then distribute the profits and you get 1/1000th of it? Like it's great that they have this pool and that you have 1/1000th of it, but how does that equate to you getting something for it?
Yeah. So what will ultimately happen is they are going to what they call fractionalize the vault. So the vault of NFT assets, there's a company called fractional.art that recently launched like a month or two ago. Andy 8052 is the guy on Twitter that runs it. He's an absolute genius. He's a good buddy of mine too. But never met him in person, but like good buddy through the streets.
Choice of friends.
Right. Well, no,
that's going to be a fun conversation to get into too, because how many connections, how many friends, how many business partners have met just through the NFT community. And that's, if you ask 99% of people, they'll say the community is more fun than making investments in any of these. But it's definitely a communal. It's definitely a communal experience in a lot of ways, and I'll get into that. But in terms of the kitty bank and the vault, like they will fractionalize that, and basically it will be, let's say there's each share is 100,000. It's 1/100,000th or whatever it is. Because I think there's 10% that they're going to do whatever with, but the other 90% of it that is correspondent to each token plus 8 more tokens that you will get, right? Like that fractionalized vault will have 100,000 things in it, right? Or 100,000 pieces. And let's say I own 1,000 pieces of it or whatever the case is, or 1/1000th of the pieces, right? To 100. What I will have is essentially tokens against the value of that vault. And the way that fractional art works is you vault something, you provide liquidity to tokens for the holding of that thing, and then people can exchange the tokens of that thing against the value of the vault itself. So as the vault increases in price and the assets contained within, like naturally what will happen is people will want to purchase portions of that at whatever valuation that we have, and the price of the individual tokens will rise. The idea then is if you want to get liquid, it's not that they need to sell 1/1000th of what's in the vault for me to get my money out. I can actually sell my token that represents my 1/1000th of the vault to someone else that wants it. And there's probably an exchange fee for fractional that they gather out of that. But one of the interesting dynamics with fractional that you'll see over and play out, which is super fascinating and a really interesting use case, is that as the vault holder, like when you put a vault together, like if I just wanted to put my 10 Penelopes into a vault and fractionalize it, I could, and I could make it, I could make it 1,000 different shares and each one of you could buy whatever from it. But I have to set a buyout price, and I can make it really, really high. But if someone then comes in and bids on it at that buyout price and says, I want it for what you said you would sell it for, that triggers an auction. And that auction then allows for people to come in and buy the values or the value of the vault. Like, someone gave the base price, that's the reserve, it's met. And then someone can, lever up over the next 7 days or whatever the case is. And then at that case, if the vault did get liquidated and someone came in and spent, I think the kitty bank right now is valued at 800 ETH, which is like a stupid amount of money, right? Like if it got, let's say it got to 1,000 ETH and someone bought it out at 1,000 ETH, right? Then everybody that held the tokens would be paid out the corresponding value of what the ETH for the vault was. So you trade against it like a stock, and then it would be like if you like Coca-Cola, you took that example, like you're trading it at like what the valuation of an individual share, whatever that granted you in dividends or otherwise. And then when Coke said, just kidding, we're done, we never want to make soda again, we're going to liquidate our entire balance sheet, we're going to sell off all of our assets, all of our intellectual property, all of our physical machinery and everything, and then they bundled up the proceeds and just split it amongst all the stockholders. Like that's what's functionally happening with the vaulting process. So it hasn't been vaulted yet, it will be soon. It's a super interesting mechanic and set of mechanics, but it's something that I think a lot of projects are going to copy. Jack Settleman and a handful of other folks, Drew Austin, and they're launching Knights of Degen, which is going to be kind of like sports betting / NFT process, Discord access, gated community type of thing. And they're doing a similar thing. They're going to have like a Knight's chest or something like that, where it's a portion of the proceeds of the sale. And I think you guys might be doing this too, right? Like to some degree, like there are lots of projects. Club. Yeah, there's lots of projects where it's, my ownership of this thing isn't just like a cool picture. It is
a representation of my physical stake in the assets of the thing, and the assets of the thing, if they go up in value, then the value of the individual tokens that represent it would as well.
Quick question, and I'm glad you went there, because I want you to rank these 1, 2, 3, but also if you think about a pie chart, give me percentages. Success of a project. How much of it depends on the art, how good an image looks? How much of it depends on that utility, access to XYZ? And how much of it depends on the founding team?
How much? So I guess important qualification or clarification here. How much do I care, or how much does the community care?
That is the best answer ever, because it depends on the project. Some people want art projects. Some people want an artist. And
I mean more so like, what do I personally value in looking and assessing, or what does like actually plays out? Because I think they're different answers.
Do both.
Okay. So what I care about more than anything is the team, number one. And it's hard when a lot of these teams for many of these NFT projects are either anonymous or pseudo-anonymous. It's really difficult to assess that out. And the second piece, I think what draws you in initially is probably the cool art or the cool thing. And what keeps you there is the utility in the team, right? Generally speaking. That said, I think where Cage is right about this is it really depends on like what the definition of the utility is, right? Like if the utility is, this is a cool piece of art and it's rare and I want it, like it matters less to me about a team or like a future utility of the thing if it's just really fucking cool. Can I curse on the podcast? I'm sorry. Okay. I'll try and keep it.
1-star and 5-star reviews no matter what we do. So we're all
sorry. I apologize.
Of course you can. You do whatever you like.
So it will matter. Yeah, there it is. I'm plunging toilets. So it matters a lot. And when you start to think about like the NFT marketplace or NFTs in general, as like very different applications of and utilizations of a technology that are not simply, hey, this is a sports card, or hey, this is a piece of art. Like there are so many different kind of, not silos because they're all interchangeable in many different ways, but there's so many different pockets and niches that like these things fit into. And it matters more for me for something like this, where they're trying, like with Penelope's, like they're doing a very ambitious thing. Like the art to me, like it's fine. It's not the coolest cat project. I think Cool Cat's art is better. I like the Lazy Lions a lot. Like the art's fine. It's suitable. It's growing on me because I own them, right? Like you love them like your children. Like even if your children are ugly, like it is okay, right? But the thing I care about with this project is like, and the reason that I'm sticking around with it is I understand where this is going, like the technology and the utility of it. I have massive faith in the team because they're not pseudo-anonymous. We know who they are and we know like their reputation in the NFT space. They have funded themselves for a year salary, like tax withheld salary stuff from the sale. This isn't like none of these people need to get rich off of this thing, which is a huge benefit. And they have like a pretty clear roadmap of where they want to go. It's not a fully fleshed out, hey, here's everything on paper and this is exactly what you can expect. There's some surprise and delight to it. But at least it's easy to comprehend. That said, getting to that level of understanding and comprehension of this, like it took me a long time. It's not something that happens immediately. It's not something that most of us can assess like really quickly, especially if you need to make a quick choice about a mint or like actually pulling something, or like, hey, I have 10 minutes to decide whether or not this thing is going to fly or not. Like that's where the speculation comes in. And I think where for me, it's more like the stuff that I buy on secondary, meaning like after it's already been dropped or minted, are the things where I have serious conviction in like where it's going. And the stuff that I buy at the beginning is usually more speculative. Like, hey, I'm not totally sure where this is going. Maybe I feel really confident about it, like the Hearst piece that I bought. And I'm like, I know that this is going to be big. Or it's like, hey, I'm willing to afford a flyer here, much like, yesterday I went and bought a booster box or blaster box of Panini Prism basketball cards. Like, I know that that's probably a bad investment, but guess what? If I crack a really cool autograph or like, a wild, a redemption or something like that, hey, it would pay off in spades, right? It turns out the best card that I got out of that pack, by the way, was this Larry Bird.
With
patch.
a Larry Bird relic. Larry Bird relic. Interesting.
Guess how much this costs on eBay? It's kind of
$3.99.
So, yeah, $7.99 or something silly.
0.0003 ETH.
Nothing. And my second best one was this one. Lovely little Clint Capella. Not numbered.
So that brings us to a good point. And guys, obviously this is like NFTs 201 bridging into 301.
Sorry about that.
but if we just back up real quick, there was an amazing example. Minting, which is essentially going to a founding team's website, clicking the start minting button and connecting your wallet and you mint, is no different than going to your LCS or buying a digital pack online, but going to your LCS, buying Prism and opening packs. And what I love about this space and what our vision, our mission is we want to bridge the sports card world and the NFT world. We want to bring sports card enthusiasts into NFTs, and we want to bring NFT people into sports cards. They have so many similarities, and there's so many kind of interesting parallels. Hope you guys kind of pick up on that metaphor, that reference.
Well, this is what we're doing. Plunge really went deep there, right? It was a deep plunge. The point we're trying to make, and the point he was trying to make with it, was that these NFTs do different things. And yes, there are art NFTs out there that are just art, and people buy them because this is a cool looking piece of art and there's nothing else to it. There are teams that disappear right after mint, right? But then there are teams that do crazy stuff, like he's got going on with Penelope's, with a liquidity pool of fractionalizing a punk. Just insanity, right? And the cool thing about it is, as each layer of this is peeled back, teams are able to do more with their NFTs. And Andrew, and that's really the takeaway from it, not about the specifics and the staking and the whole deal. It's just that not everything is the same. And if you're going to put your money in and invest your money, the team matters, and what they're doing with that token that's going to generate value for you matters. But let's take it one step further, because we talk about how minting is just like buying a pack. But imagine if after you bought that pack and you look at the card, you were able to scan it in, and Panini gave you something because of that. And then every month they sent another pack to your house that you had another chance of potentially opening up something good in that pack. And then 6 months down the road or 8 months down the road, it came with an invitation to the Panini Festival, where you were able to meet other owners of that who you've been speaking to in a Panini-led Discord and talking to on Twitter, and built up a community that Panini and or Topps has done with this stuff. And then a year after, Panini developed this fund of other Panini vaulted assets that you're able to now have. The minting process is like buying packs. But what NFTs have done in the right one is they're layering on so much more that it's not just buying the pack and then it's done. It's buying the pack. And if you just happen to get that Larry Bird, okay, that might not be the greatest art right now, but that card behind it might open up something else down the road that allows you to maybe get another cool thing in the next pack. So that's why I like this.
Or even just an opportunity to meet Larry Bird.
Larry Bird.
Even something super basic like that.
Yeah.
So it's cool stuff. It's it's access. It's community building. It's a way to get the community to go a little closer, more together. That's what we're trying to do with ours. It's it's educational. We're trying to we already have a community. The Discord's growing. We have people who have come in that were not part of our community before, that just were brought in by a friend, and they're like, okay, tell us about this.
Yeah.
And we try to. So.
Yeah, I think you're dead on. And I think where I said at the beginning, right, there are so many avenues in, right? There's so many different avenues in. And if you're not willing to spend the time, the energy, the emotional effort, all of those things, there are different ways to strategize how you break in. And there's a different focus, right? Like, if you're going to be a passive investor in something like this, where you're not planning to get engaged with the community and participate frequently and all those things, there are far more, like there are many different types of NFTs that, for art, for example, where it's less about this community built and utility after the fact, and more about like, it's a fine art piece, it's super rare, and like in theory will appreciate in value over time as things happen, right? It's not reliant on the future utility of this thing and people being engaged to do that thing. Same thing with some of the like really illiquid Top Shot moments, right? For example, right? You're looking at some of the Series 1 hollows and the legendaries and all these things where it's like, yeah, it's going to be really difficult to day trade that because finding a market for that thing is going to be super hard. But if you are bullish on this as like the preeminent first sports NFT, first-ish, right? Like there's shades of gray on that, but like with major NBA IP, it's okay to vault it and just move on, right? You don't need to like be actively engaged all day, every day with Top Shot in order to like own a very significant piece and like passive investment, right? So I think it's, you know, as people are thinking about bridging into this type of thing, I think a huge barrier to entry is seeing people that are gung ho about it and spending all this time is like, I don't have the time to do that thing. And it's okay to like not be super invested and engaged like time wise. You just need to then think about the projects that you're looking at in terms of, do they require me to pay attention to the market really closely? Are they things that, you know, are blue chip, so to speak? I don't really like that term, but like, are they things that are really well established already and really well respected? And like the thought of them going anywhere is, or to zero is really, really hard to wrap your head around. You know, that's the type of stuff you'd focus on as opposed to like the quick flip things that are like, hey, let's see if this starfish project or this like Arabian camels project, like, hey, you might hit the jackpot, but you got to be able to like, the execution risk of some of those trades is really high. And you got to be able to like pay attention and have your finger on the pulse of everything that's happening, or else you're going to get caught holding a big bag in some cases. So if you're not willing to do that, you don't have the energy, you don't have the wherewithal to do it, that's okay. Like that's not the barrier to entry to the NFT space more broadly. It may be a barrier to a specific portion of the NFT space, but you don't have to do that to have fun. I know lots of people that are sort of in it in some ways. They take some advice. I have some friends that are like, you know, in Penelopes and that's it. I have some friends that are in a handful of Top Shot things and that's it. Zed runs another good example. Like, you know, just let it appreciate in value and not have to play every day or any of those things. So there's lots of different pockets like that, and finding a good Sherpa like Cage or Andrew that can guide you down that path of like, this is what I'm after. This is the amount of time that I'm willing to spend on this thing. Hopefully those folks can give you the point you in the right direction.
Cage, let me ask you, was buying your first NFT hard? Like, was it a challenge? Because today, so we've released the news that we're going to be launching our NFT, our website. It's coming out next week. We're really on at the finish line. So we're really excited to bring you guys what we've been building. But the first question we had, and Cage, it's our thesis has been confirmed that a lot of people from our community, this will be the first NFT they ever buy. And in fact, this might be the first Ether that they kind of, I don't say you buy Ether. I say you convert US dollars to Ether. I think that's actually a better way to word it. Because when you think of buying something, you buy a water bottle, you're converting your USD to Ether. So was it tough for you to figure out how to buy your first NFT, Cage?
Yes, 100%. And here's why, right? So it depends on what you consider a quote unquote NFT, centralized, decentralized, and all that other fun stuff. Top Shot was huge. You know, we called Roham the pusher and the drug dealer. Like that was the first one for me. Right. And that was easy to get in because you were able to, you know, I'm an old man. I use my credit card. You know what I mean? It was the easiest thing in the world. Here you go. Just put my credit card in and I was able to lock it down and buy right then and there. No waiting periods, no, you know, craziness. Now, was there like a, you know your client kind of stuff and you have to go through the
oh, yeah.
First of all, just a side note, I saw KYC. I read KFC and I thought I was buying chicken with this and I was excited because I was like, this is the best thing ever. I'm getting basketball stuff. I'm getting chicken. This is the best thing ever. But it wasn't. It was KYC, not KFC. But so that made it easy. But fast forward to May. I did not have any ETH in my wallet. I opened up my MetaMask wallet in May because I wanted to get into VFriends. Right? And even though I had bought Top Shot and sold Top Shot and had thousands of moments, literally thousands of moments go in and out of my account, right? You do thousands of moments, right? Even though I had done that, the more decentralized world, the sailing in the open sea, right? And getting money, you know, through MetaMask and moving Ethereum and the whole 9 yards, that was its own animal for me. And it's what we're seeing with our audience now. It really is. But was it difficult? The answer is no. But I didn't know how to do it. And when I started the process and waited like an idiot 2 days before Gary dropped VFriends, and then there was a waiting period and I couldn't get the money in time, I was just like, forget it. I'm not going to do it anymore. And I just never did. Yeah. And believe it or not, how I got into NFTs, how I got into the ones that I'm in now, is because the last Top Shot moment that I sold, I was paid in part moments, part Ethereum, because I had the MetaMask wallet open to try to get into the VFriends. Someone sent me Ethereum into MetaMask, and I used that to buy all of the NFTs that I have now in my MetaMask wallet. So it's, yes, there is a bar to entry there. There is this hurdle, let's call it. But what we also want to do with this is show our audience that it is, you started this off with everyone's climbing different mountains. This is a speed bump, right? This is not a mountain you have to climb. It's a speed bump. It's not that hard. It seems daunting when you've never done it, and it sounds like, things like MetaMask and Coinbase and moving Ethereum and wallets and seed phrases. It sounds like a different language. And I remember going back a couple months, it was a different language to me. But now looking back, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I didn't get in VFriends because I'm that stupid. Like I'm that, and that really is kind of, my answer, I guess. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. I thought you answered it well in terms of like, how easy was it? Like, one thing I will say, and it's not an insignificant speed bump, but because like especially if it's any significant chunk of money, like people generally, and at least in my life, and the people that I know and I'm friends with and I hang out with, like not a lot, we can't afford to just like throw $5,000 at something most of the time, right? Like most of the time it's like, you have to have relative conviction in something to spend a big chunk of fiat currency on it, right? I use that term, right? Fiat currency or whatever, because I sort of demarcate in my brain, like my ETH holdings and my fiat stuff, right? And when the barrier to entry is not just like the technical gaps that exist and like the friction of buying on Coinbase and then converting into MetaMask and all that stuff, which is like, it takes a little bit of time. If someone can guide you through that process or watch a YouTube video, like that's the easiest way to do it. But it's not an insignificant amount of money to like not know exactly where it's going to go. Right. Yep. It'd be like, it's the equivalent of like Venmoing a random address and being like, better hope it's right.
A few things on that, guys. So we're going to have guides and tutorials. One, if you're not in our Discord, please join our Discord for two reasons. One, we're going to have guides and tutorials about how to buy Ether, how to send it to MetaMask, how to create a MetaMask wallet, the secret phrase, and how to properly keep that. So we'll have those tutorials. We also have an amazing community. A lot of people, I don't know if you realize this, I'm sure you do if you're part of what we're building. A lot of the answers we get, a lot of the growth that we've had has just been because of our community, and they help each other out because they're going through the process together. But even to add a layer on top of that, we'll be doing a YouTube live this weekend where we're going through some of that stuff as well to kind of walk you guys through and take on one-on-one questions. Here's how I did it. So first thing is you need to just convert your USD to ETH and then send $5. Do a test, right? I always like to do a test run to see, am I learning? Am I doing this the right way? Because it is very scary to send $5,000 to just a random assortment of 48 characters that don't mean much.
Right. Totally agree.
So we talked about NBA Top Shot. We talked about what makes a successful NFT. We talked about cool projects and how utility and the team is more important than the art, even though the art draws you in. First off, can you explain? We were at 52 minutes. What's a plunge? Why the name PlungeFather? A lot of people haven't listened to the first episode, and we made all these references to plunge.
Dude, you don't know what a plunger is?
It's a gambling term, Cage.
It's a gambling term. So I started a Slack group with a bunch of buddies 5 years ago that was focused on essentially like fantasy sports decathlon. So it was like, how do we do a year-long thing? I'm sick of just playing fantasy football with my friends and then going radio silent for 8 months. Like, how do we do this year-long and it be more than just football? The first year we did like 20 events, and that was too many. So we're down to like 16, right? We do 4 events a quarter. It starts with the Super Bowl and rolls through, Masters, and this year we did the Summer Olympics, and we do Tour de France, which is by far my favorite event. But long story short, there's a group of guys that we have a Slack group, and that it was called the Plungers. And plunger is an alternative definition for like a reckless gambler, basically. So my handle in Slack is PlungeFather, and as a result, like when I got onto crypto/NFT/Top Shot Twitter, I sort of used that as opposed to my regular name just to sort of demarcate my like personal from my Twitter personality. But I'd never use my regular Twitter anymore. So that's who I am. That's why Plungers.
What
I
the
would
hell is
say
an NFT?
change it.
Can you
Change
Why?
that story from now on. And it's going to be, you know what? In the world of NFTs, there's a lot of shit out there.
Yeah, you got to plunge.
You need
it
a
out.
plunger to clear your way through it. I'm the guy. The plunge
Could be.
father can
Could be.
just sort through it. Okay, what's an NFT, Andrew? Go ahead.
Well,
He's
like
getting philosophical.
No, not philosophical. Actually, very, very practical. Like, you've talked about some of your friends who've never bought an NFT. They're like, Plunge, why do you own all these cats smoking something?
Right.
What's an NFT? What is it?
Yeah, it's a non-fungible token, right? So if you have a lot of cardboard listeners, the easiest way to explain it is a base card versus a numbered card, right? So like your Clint Capella that doesn't have a numbered version out of it is essentially synonymous with every other Clint Capella that looks like this. They're all fungible, right? They're exchangeable. They don't have any specific value relative to one another. But if I had a numbered Clint Capella that was number 2 out of 35, it's distinct and separate, right? In the same way that US dollars, like, yeah, they all have serial numbers on them and they're all like, yes, they're individual and, one is physical and thus they're not the same, but they're exchangeable in the same way. And a non-fungible token would be the inverse of that, right? It's something that is unique and it's specific to its individual like iteration, right? An interesting dynamic and something that you'll see, and there's like what we say technically versus what in practice like is used as NFTs. Like NFTs have sort of become just synonymous with like digital collectible. There are digital collectibles that are not NFTs. So something to keep in mind. A really good example of this, which is a funny example, but if you're familiar, there is a Twitter NFT or Twitter NFTs, 140 of them that were created a couple months back, that was sort of in homage to a variety of different like big milestones in Twitter's history. And each of those NFTs had 20 copies of them. In fact, they are all exactly the same. And one bid for any of them can be accepted by anybody. So they're all actually semi-fungible tokens. There are only 20 of each of them, but each one of them is synonymous with the others, such that if you decided that you wanted to buy the Jello one, and you put $100,000 bid or 100 ETH bid out there, any one of the 20 people that own the Jello one can accept it. So something to keep in mind that like not all digital collectibles are NFTs, but it doesn't really matter in practice in many cases.
Fun fact, he's just chomping at the bit. I could see it in his face.
Why
about the Jello NFT?
Do you own the Jello one? I totally forgot that.
Twitter saw our YouTube video. They saw Cage was wearing the Truffle Shuffle shirt, and they said, "We're sending you the Jello NFT."
There you
so
go.
Cage has one of the 140.
Revisionist history. We'll go with that as the story as to why. You are the reason that I got that.
You're welcome.
You are the reason I got it. You were on there that day, and
I was like, going nuts. I was selling
I want one, and
I would have sold my finger.
My comment was, I like this guy Plunge. He's awesome. Give him one.
Yeah, and then they gave you one.
They gave me one for, I guess, being nice and saying you should get one. I don't know.
There you go.
Lesson learned there, guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, but it doesn't matter in many cases. I think that's one example where it really doesn't matter that it's an SFT versus an NFT. Semi-fungible token. It doesn't, I mean, for all intents and purposes, like it is a digital collectible that you own that is verifiable on the blockchain. And whether or not it's numbered 1, 2, 3, 4 through 20, or they're all the same, it doesn't really matter. From a technical perspective, it's different, but for most people, it wouldn't matter at all.
I like the line of demarcation though, because it's true. Like everything right now, NFT is a buzzword. You will turn on CNN, CNBC when they talk about money, NFTs. And Panini came out with what they called Panini NFTs, but they really aren't. In fact, they're digital collectibles because you can't take them off the Panini website, Panini app. They are centralized on the Panini blockchain, which they're digital collectibles, digital cards, but I wouldn't consider them traditional NFTs.
They're all numbered.
Yeah, they are all numbered. And I think, there's this, there's right now, at least, I think like an elitist view of like, chain supremacy, chain importance, chain hierarchy type of thing, where you think of like the Ethereum mainnet, like NFTs on the Ethereum mainnet are like the cream of the crop. Well, Top Shot is on Flow and like Zed is on Polygon, and like a handful of these other like major projects, like major in the sense that they are perhaps the largest mainstream application and like adoption of these things are on side chains because of the problems that exist with the main chain, right? With mainnet in terms of gas, right? And transaction fees. So something to keep in mind with all of that is that like, yeah, the Panini chain is not on the Ethereum mainnet. It's not even a fork of the Ethereum mainnet as far as we understand, but the same thing with Autograph and DraftKings and all these other like, IP holders that are doing this stuff. For many people, it doesn't fucking, excuse my language, doesn't matter. Like they won't care about it at all. And it will matter for 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 people. Where it will matter very significantly is if any of these companies go under, like they're gone, right? Like, and you need to, I think, just at least be aware from a risk perspective that like the second that Panini stops maintaining their own blockchain or that they pivot away from it, like you're never getting that thing back. As compared, and the same thing holds with Top Shot as well. Like we're bullish on the fact that Flow will exist and continue to exist, but right now you can't access your Top Shot moments anywhere other than a Dapper wallet. They're getting away from that, and I think at the end of the year, they're kind of targeting sort of that non-custodial wallet where you can have that NFT wherever you want. But the idea that this like side chain is inherently inferior is, I think, one that comes with a lot of assumptions about the benefits of the decentralized nature of the main chains and the side chains that come off of them. But something to keep in mind that like from the broad consumer public's perspective, and for probably many of your listeners, it shouldn't matter unless it becomes a problem. Just be aware that it's something that exists and that like many people care about it. But the loud people that care about it aren't the broader public.
A lot to hear today, guys. This might be one that you listen to.
We can go part two at some point.
Absolutely. It's one you listen to. You might kind of go ahead and play around with MetaMask, Ethereum, Coinbase, get all that set up, and then come back and re-listen because there's a lot of value here. And I'll tell you, I have no financial interest in saying this. The whole NFT space isn't going anywhere. Technology is a one-way road, and it doesn't move backwards. And NFTs, once you start understanding them and really play around with them, you understand how much friction they remove from the world. Specifically, you guys listening that are sports card enthusiasts, grading companies, and manufacturing of card companies are our two biggest, I don't want to use the word issues, concerns in the hobby from a fan standpoint. And if you believe it or not, NFTs reduce that friction because you have decentralized creators of NFTs, right? So there's no Topps or Panini. There are a few of them, but anybody could go ahead and create their card and have value. And that makes it both cool, exciting, and a little bit dangerous. So we've talked about that. And then the grading, the subjectiveness of grading. There's no need for that with NFTs because they're serial numbered. They're NFT, they're non-fungible, they're all unique. So this space is going nowhere. It's a one-way street to innovation. Cage, any final words? Plunge, any final words? Where can people find you?
With your, just before we'll let Plunge, everybody can find him, and you can talk about Penelope's again, and we'll give him the whole minutes. But exactly what you're saying is important about why this is the future. I don't want to call him out and say he doesn't know anything about this stuff, but I'm going to do it anyway. Sorry, Drake. So we got a message this morning from Drake, Drake's PC, who is a huge card collector, knows everything, a big PC guy, collects a whole bunch of stuff. Everybody knows him, pictures all over the place of him, at the National, you name it. And, he says, hey, I heard your episode. I want to get in. How do I do this? What's the story? And we were talking back and forth. And he's like, all right, well, this is my MetaMask, here, this is the address. And before he even, he's telling me about his son is into this stuff and, into video games, the whole deal. And I said, hey, by the way, check your wallet. You have an NFT. And I sent him one of the many I had in my wallet. I paid the gas for it and the whole deal. I think I sent him an Art Stars with like football shoulder pads and like a poop emoji, one of these, that I own. And I'm like, this is why we like this, right? Like I could send him a card, right? But we're talking on Instagram and boom, the next message I'm able to say, here's a picture, look in your wallet, it's there. I didn't have to say, here's a tracking number. I would have loved to send you a PSA 10, but PSA really dinged me on the corners on this one. And it's a 9. I'm going to send it out by priority mail. Here's the tracking. It'll probably be there sometime next week, assuming the postman's not on crack. and maybe it won't get lost. I have no idea how much eBay is going to charge me. No, instant, boom, I sent them one. That's the future, especially vis-a-vis content creators, you name it, being able to share this stuff with your community, your audience, giveaways, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just, it is the future, I think. So sorry to cut you off there, Andrew, but it's a real world example of something that happened exactly today of why we're moving in this direction.
Right. I will say one thing about this though, and you mentioned the sort of like grading and the just quality and like concern over physical like condition stuff. I think there's actually some value from a collectibles market perspective in the fact that like physical things degrade over time, right? Because they have not just a built-in scarcity from a production perspective, but they have a decreasing scarcity over time with loss, damage, whatever, right? So when you start to get into, the rarest cards in the world, they're not rare because they were really rare when they were printed necessarily. They're really rare because there's so few that exist anymore because of degradation and, all this different stuff. That said, I think there would be, hey, take free idea for anybody out there. If you want to build NFTs that degrade over time, and there are a handful of companies that are projects that are doing this. And one that you can, if you're interested in minting something that's really cheap, other than the Cajun Goldberg, the Lions, Lucas Tigers and whatnot, there is a you can mint right now called Qubits, Qubits, qubitsonice.com. I think they're 0.025 ETH, which is something like $60-$70. They're cute little digital collectibles. They look like Funko Pops. They're actually really cool. And they're boxed, and they can be, the boxes that they come in can actually be damaged. And so like that's a quality that gets stored on chain and all these different things. So, I think there is value in some of that, the like degradation over time, other than like primary scarcity. We will see some of that with like, hey, there's 50 of these 100 that went to this address that are burned or whatever, right? Like,
well, the burning, and people are working burning in Plunge. That's like Synergic Labs mushrooms. I don't know if you got any of those.
There's all sorts of
music. Right? So they are their next release. You can either pay to mint or you use your one, you burn it and it's gone. So the 10,000 that there are will be decreased over time for people to make that choice of whether you burn it and get into the next one. Or keep it, so it's interesting.
Yeah, the deflationary supply mechanics are really interesting to me in a lot of ways because of like scarcity over time, right? It's scarcity right now, but then scarcity over time when you either have to make a choice based on the mechanic or otherwise. I don't think cardboard's going anywhere. So in getting into NFTs, I've sort of gotten into cardboard to some degree because it's super fun. It's fun. It's super fun to crack stuff. And like, I think that the like thrill of opening a pack, I literally went to, I mentioned this, I literally went to my LCS, right? My LCS, local card shop. I went to my local card shop.
Sidechain and then off-chain and Polygon.
No, Jim. His name's Jim.
I love it.
His name's Jim. Jim's Card Corner down the street.
Jim Halbert.
Yep.
Okay.
And I will say Jim's price is a little high. The blaster box I could have gotten for $80 on eBay was $100. That's okay. Small business. I'm with it. Right. I get to crack it in front of him. He has no idea what they're worth. Hey, that's cool. I didn't get an autograph. I had to go like Google it anyway. And the process of figuring that out. There is something nice about having a tangible PC, right? Like, and something that you can display or show off or whatever, right? Like it's not just for a lot of people, it's not just a store of value. There's a completionist element to it. There can be like a physical display element to it. There's a flex element to it within your friend groups and so forth. Like there are so many different reasons that people get into cardboard in the same way that people get into NFTs, right? Not everybody collects the same because they care about different things, whether it's a nostalgia factor or otherwise, right? And I think that's, as long as you can recognize that like not everybody in NFTs is in it for the same reason and they don't collect the same shit, and it's not just like boilerplate in the same way that you want people to understand for your hobby as well. Like there are different ways to approach this thing, and it's you can have fun with it in a variety of different ways. You don't have to do it a very specific way. Then it's sort of the world's your oyster when it comes to that stuff. So I can be, I think we're wrapping up, but like if there's anything you guys need from me or anybody in your community needs from me, like don't hesitate to reach out. DMs are always open.
At PlungeFather. And just like Gary says, 99% of NFTs are going to go to zero. 99% of your cards are worth nothing too. They're base cards. It's the same game. Is it not?
Am I
Cage?
ever gonna like box up this Larry Bird $7 moment and send it to someone? No, I just burned
No, but
$100.
my
That's
favorite
probably a
thing
nice-
is picturing Plunge leaving the store, the LCS, and saying, "Yeah, I could have got this for 80 on eBay, but it's in my hands. It's right here. So I paid $20. I paid $20 in gas.
Yeah,
you know, I paid
that's what it
$20.
is.
It's a little extra. I paid some gas so that I have it immediately
Exactly.
in my hands, and I'm done. But listen, we expect some of that too. We expect some people to get into our NFT and through the community get into cardboard for it. We would love to see some crypto people move into the cardboard because
It's fun.
minting, opening packs, it's sort of it's sort of got some similarities.
I love it. It's like the thrill of like a potential score, right? It's like scratching a lotto ticket, right? Like, and not every NFT purchase or every cardboard purchase is that. If you're buying something on secondary, you're doing it for a very different reason than buying a pack necessarily. Like, I've assessed the value at a current price. I think it's going to go up and be worth more longer term, or I need it to complete a portion of my PC or whatever, right? Like, there's a very different dynamic between buying something outright that exists and you know what it is versus buying something that's hidden and there's some mystery to it, right? And there's lots of those dynamics in the NFT marketplace more broadly too. So anyway, lots of fun across the board.
Have you looked at the betting board for this week? Any of your PlungeFather locks?
Oh, Plunge.
We're doing a fun show, guys. So I haven't even told Plunge this. So we signed an agreement, a partnership, and we always try to do our partnerships a little different. We want to do a partnership that's fun for our community, not just great for us. And we're doing a show on Whatnot. And it's going to be like a Sunday NFL countdown type of thing where we go live 10 a.m. 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. We talk sports betting, daily fantasy, and some kind of players that are under the radar. And then we're going to sell some slabs. So Sunday morning, guys, 10 a.m. Eastern, we're going to go live on Whatnot to talk all things.
Plunge is a prophet. He doesn't even know. He mentioned the Twitter jiggle jello without even realizing it was mine. And before, if you play it back, guys, he said, "Yeah, you want to get into Andrew and Cage's, their NFT, Luka's, Tigers, and whatnot, whatever you want to call it." You are. I don't know. There's something going on. You got the winning lottery numbers for tonight, maybe Mega Millions or something like that. You see the future pretty well today.
My lock of the week, and I do have to run because my son's upstairs crying. But the lock of the week is the Niners -3.5 at Philly. There's no chance they lose that game by less than a touchdown, or win that game by less than a touchdown.
Debo Samuel, another big game.
They're gonna smoke them. Wow. That was the Lions coming back and making it sort of a game was not really a thing. They're gonna blow the brakes off of Philly. Anyway, I got to run, but it was, as always, a pleasure talking with you guys. Thanks all. And like I said, if there's anything I can do for anybody, let me know.